Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for our webinar Less is More, Functional Flowers for Clean Label, Texture and More. My name is Elise Grolière. I'm part of the marketing team of Lemongrain Ingredients, and I will animate this webinar. So as the leader in functional flowers in Europe, we are pioneers when it comes to clean label solutions for the food industry. And for more than 30 years now, we've been a real partner to industrial with our functional flowers. So during this session, we are gladly welcoming Katharina Bagul from Euromonitor, who will tell us more about clean label and the era of minimally processing. And then our R&D manager, Mirella Coleoni, will highlight the benefits of functional flowers as clean label solutions for food applications. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the chat on your right, and we'll take extra minutes in the end to answer them. So let's start this webinar. Katharina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elise, for the introduction, and welcome everyone also from my side. It's my pleasure to kick off the webinar today with my presentation on the topic of clean label and the era of minimally processing. To start with, I would like to start with a question. What is it actually if we talk about clean label? So clean label, there is not a single definition. It is rather an industry term. If we would ask consumers, they might not know what that term means, but consumers know what they want. They are looking for food that is increasingly less processed and inherently more natural. They're requesting simplicity, shorter ingredients list, and they want transparency. They want to know what goes in the food they eat. The term clean label has evolved a lot over the past 20 years. So if we go back in the early days, in the 90s, it was a lot about avoiding genetically modified food. Then it was about removing E numbers. Then artificial colors and additives became a primary concern. And then gluten-free and other free-from labels came into the picture. And nowadays, there is a strong focus on natural. Also, there is a different understanding about clean labels in different parts of the world. Food safety is, for example, an aspect that is very important in regions such as APAC and Middle East Africa, especially as there have been a number of high-profile food scandals over the years. So that makes it very important in the perception of consumers when it comes to clean food. In the Western world, so in Western Europe, the expectations of clean label are very different. So let's have a look what type of attributes consumers in Western Europe are looking for when it comes to clean label preferences. On this chart, you can see the results from our health and nutrition survey that has been fielded in February 2020. And respondents have been asked about their preferences with respect to different clean label attributes. That included natural, free from preservatives, limited or no artificial ingredients, no GMO, only contains ingredients they recognize and familiar with, and short ingredients list. You can see that free from preservatives is actually the attribute that has received the highest rankings in countries such as Italy and France, with 40% and 36% respectively. Limited and no artificial ingredients is the one that is in top position in Germany and the United Kingdom. If we look at the top three, it is free from preservatives, limited or no artificial ingredients, and no GMO or all natural, depending on the country we're looking at. I mentioned in the introduction that natural is an attribute that is increasingly gaining popularity among consumers and also inspires a lot of product innovation. If we compare those four Western European countries, we can see that natural receives the highest rankings in Italy, followed by France. Regulation also plays a role when it comes to how much attention consumers pay when it comes to what goes into their food. So front-of-pack nutrition labeling, for example, is increasingly on the rise. At the moment, there are a number of different systems in place across Western Europe or even other regions, and most of them are voluntary. The front-of-pack nutrition systems obviously try help consumers to make healthier food choices. And this is something that increasingly becomes important now in light of COVID-19, especially as a link has been established between overweight and higher risk of serious illness or even death from COVID-19. So health has really become top of mind for consumers, and overweight and obesity puts governments increasingly under pressures to take action. So Nutri-Score is the concept that has gained a lot of traction, especially in continental Europe, and receives a lot of support from not only politicians, but also retailers and some of the leading packaged food manufacturers. In our health and nutrition survey, we also have asked the respondents if they actually pay close attention to the nutrition labels of the food and beverages before they consume it. And as you can see in the response rates for these 4 Western European countries, in Italy and France, 1 out of 4 consumers does read the nutrition labels before consuming the food or beverage product. In the United Kingdom and the UK, it's a little bit less, it's 1 out of 5. This might seem a little low at first glance, but actually Italy and France are very much in line with the global average, which also sits at 26%. It may be important to note that women score a little higher as compared to men here, not only on a global level, but also in those 4 countries. And also we do see a difference between the different generation or age groups. Older consumers, they score higher here. The baby boomers, they rank at 30%, and Generation Z with the lowest scores at around 22%. Consumers nowadays are more and more connected, especially nowadays they spend a lot more time at home. They're constantly on their phones and tablets. They have a lot of information on their fingertips. They can look up ingredients. They can find out information about the background, where the food comes from. Tracing increasingly plays a role. And there are also a number of apps that help consumers make healthier food choices. In France, for example, a number of those apps have gained popularity, and ScanUp, the one you can see in the slide, is an example of such an app where consumers can actually find out additional information about the product, the nutritional profile based on Nutri-Score in this example, and also about the level of processing. There are different reasons why consumers try to eat less processed food. In the UK, for example, around 1/3 of the consumers indicate that they eat less processed food because they're trying to lose weight. However, the consumption of processed or ultra-processed food is also related to more serious health risks. In 2019, 2 academic studies have been published that actually establish a link between the consumption of ultra-processed foods and non-communicable disease, such as cardiovascular disease or even a higher risk of death. These studies, they have made it into the media, and they put ultra-processed food a little bit in the line of fire and have also raised consumer awareness on this topic. We have done an analysis using our nutrition data to find out how much of the energy consumed on a per capita per day basis is actually coming from ultra-processed food. And in order to do that, we have used the so-called NOVA classification. So before we look at the graph and the results here, I would like to direct your attention to the very bottom, where we show the 4 categories of the NOVA classification. So 1 category is unprocessed or minimally processed foods, highlighted in dark blue, which contains fresh food, meat, eggs, and so on and so forth. Processed culinary ingredients is another category, which is mainly about oils and fats. And then NOVA actually makes a distinction between processed and ultra-processed foods. And processed foods usually contains only 2 to 3 ingredients and will be recognized as a version of its original food. So here we have things such as cheese or fresh bread. So if we look at the results now in the graph, at the bottom you can see how much of the energy purchased on a per capita per day basis is actually coming from ultra-processed foods, highlighted in pink color. And the UK and the US, they're ranking in the number 1 and 2 place globally with 57 and 56%. India, on the very right-hand side, is the country with the lowest proportion of ultra-processed food, where it only reaches 7%. In Western Europe, you can see a few countries on the left-hand side now. There are quite a few countries where about 50% of the energy consumption is coming from ultra-processed food. That is the case for Germany, Sweden, and the UK. In countries where the Mediterranean diet is very important, Italy, Spain, and also France, the proportion of ultra-processed food is still a little bit lower. However, what's interesting to see, if we look at the top now, where we see the per capita per day energy consumption in kilocalories, and you look at the pink lines for countries like Germany, Sweden, and the UK, where the proportion of ultra-processed food is fairly high, we do see there has been a declining tendency over the years, which shows that consumers are trying to avoid or try to eat less processed food. What is interesting is that plant-based food is actually one of the hottest trends at the moment. There's a lot of consumer demand for this. The consumers believe that it's not only healthier, but also better for the planet. And they often turn a little bit of a blind eye to the fact that many of those plant-based products, they do actually have very long ingredients lists. For example, plant-based burgers, some of them have more than 20 ingredients, and they're also heavily processed. So solutions that will be able to marry plant-based with clean label, we believe, will really be a wide space with a lot of growth opportunities in the future. I also wanted to share some results from our new product claims and positioning system, which actually provides insights on the prevalence and the penetration that different clean labels have across packaged food categories for products that have been available online in 2019. So in this slide, we do see the results for ready meals and baked goods. And for categories that tend to be a bit more processed, like ready meals, we can see that no artificial ingredients are ranking on the top. No artificial colors, preservatives, and flavors are the top 3 clean label claims with the highest penetration in that category. But if we look at the penetration, we can see that they only have around 4 to 5% penetration within ready meals. And this shows there's a lot of unmet potential and really room for manufacturers to emphasize those claims more in the future. If you remember the results that we've seen at the beginning of the presentation from the Health and Nutrition Survey, there were around 30% of consumers, they are actually looking for these type of claims. So overhauling ingredients lists will increasingly become an expectation rather than an exception. If we look at the leading clean label claims for savory and sweet snacks in this slide, you can see that natural is actually a clean label claim that ranks in the top 3 here. And this is also something, as I mentioned at the beginning, which increasingly gains popularity and will also spur a lot of product innovation. Again, the actual penetration rates are still fairly low, and there is room for manufacturers to emphasize this in the future. So what is the outlook for clean label? One might think that clean label has maybe taken a bit of a backseat when the pandemic hit and people started to stockpile food at home and prepare for self-isolation. Long-lasting products were on high demand and consumers didn't mind so much about artificial preservatives in this situation. In the short term, clean label might be overshadowed a bit by health and dietary claims, especially immunity-boosting plant-based or claims that thrive a lot at the minute. As a result of consumers making health a top priority. In the midterm, we believe that the natural trend will drive the clean label movement, and consumers' desire for more natural products will spur product innovation with natural ingredients. And in the long term, as consumers become more knowledgeable and educated, transparency and clean label product formulas will be a key factor for success. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I was able to share some interesting insights on the clean label trend. And with that, I hand over to Mirella.
Thanks a lot, Katerina. So Mirella now will handle the next slides. Okay, so let's move on to the benefits of functional flours. Just before Mirella's presentation, I will quickly introduce Lemongrain Ingredients. So on the slide right next before, thank you. So like I said during the introduction, we have 30 years experience in clean label, and we are the European leader in functional flours with 2 industrial sites, one in Arques in France and one in Weert in the Netherlands. So to support this leadership, we recently invested 9 million euros in a new industrial line in Arques, increasing our capacity up to more than 10,000 tons per year. And also with a state-of-the-art technology and process. So that's really a category of products that we believe in. Mirella will explain more in details the functionalities, but just to give you the big picture, we develop and we offer healthy and functional ingredients able to combine the technical, the nutritional, and organoleptic qualities of the food product. So we ensure to provide premium quality products to make all the requirements from gluten-free to baby food, and every time with this clean label aspect around our functional flours. So Mirella, you can start. Thank
you. Everybody, it's a pleasure for me to do this presentation on functional flours. So I'm in charge of development of functional flours, and I'm located in the factory producing functional flours in Arques town in north of France. First of all, let me explain the concept of functional flours. What is a functional flour and how it's produced? Functional flours are produced by crossing grains used as raw materials in the process. The grains could be cereal grains like maize, wheat, rice, rye, oats, spelt, all species, but could be also pulses, grains like lentils, beans, pea. We have a possibility to use all different species as well as specific varieties. Another possibility is to use blends. The kernels are ground, the milled whole grain, or only some fractions will be introduced in the process. The core process consists of a hydrothermal treatment by applying steam, water, high temperature, pressure, and of course time. Combination of unit operations of grinding, sieving, blending allows the adjustment of particle size distribution of our ingredients. By the combination of specific raw material with a process, the produced ingredients will exhibit interesting specific properties for different food applications. Now, I propose we look more in depth on both process and raw material that undergoes that process. Let's start with process. The main phenomena which occurs during our process is the very well-known physical phenomena called gelatinization. The gelatinization is also what happens during baking or cooking of starchy products in our kitchen when we make a bread or a cake or we cook rice. It contributes to increase the digestibility of starchy foods in order to be able to consume them. Starch gelatinizations occurs in presence of water and heating. It could be modelized by following it in an equipment called rapid viscoanalyzer. We can follow it by reading viscosity development or looking on sample under a microscope. During gelatinization, as you could see from the graph, viscosity increases, starch granules lose their organization, swell, and reach a maximum size. By continuing the heating, starch granules will be disrupted and will release the molecular content, which will disperse in solution. In the meantime, viscosity decreases. By cooling down, another phenomenon follows up, which is called retrogradation. This involves the association of starch polymers with the formation of a gel, which can be seen in the graph by an increased viscosity. For specific variety, like waxy, the retrogradation does not occur. Let's take a look on the impact of process on texturizing properties. By undergoing the process, flours develop texturizing properties. For some ingredients, the texturizing effect occurs during food processing involving heating up operations like cooking, pasteurization, sterilization for soaps, sauces, ready meals, and allows to substitute additives like modified starches. For other ingredients, the texturizing occurs directly in cold conditions without the need of heating up. These ingredients are also called instant flours. It could be the case of instant sauces like pizza tomato sauce prepared for refrigerated pizza. Another example could be found in pastry, where the cold viscosity of a batter cake contributes to maintain inclusions of chocolate chunks or fruit pieces uniformly distributed in the batter before cooking and avoid them to fall to the bottom of the cake. Moreover, we have ingredients displaying both hot and cold texturizing properties. For example, for bakery applications, where the cold texturizing occurs during the dough mixing stage by an increase of water absorption capacity, and the hot texturizing occurs during the baking step in the oven and contributing to volume development of a loaf of bread. Or another example of application could be in the vegetarian stacks, where the cold texturizing effect is necessary to ensure the binding of the ingredients to form a stack, and hot binding effect is important during cooking in order to retain the juice and to get a juicy, tasty stack. In our range, we have also ingredients with low viscosity, which can be used to add cereals in food without texture changes or phase separation during storage. As an example, we have drinks applications, fruit or dairy with enclosed cereals and increased nutritional benefits. Let's take a look on the impact of process on particle size. By grinding and sieving operations, particle size is shaped to reach a fine particle distribution or a coarse one. A fine-tuned adjustment is achieved. In our range, we have both fine flours with particle size less than 200 micrometers or granulated flours with particle size up to 1,600 micrometers. Particle size distribution is narrow or large following customer requirements, depending on its application. Small dust particles, less than 63 micrometers, can be also removed and create dust-free flours. Granulated flours with different granule sizes are used in different applications, requiring less dust particles and a good flowing, as for example in extrusion for the production of direct extruded snacks and breakfast cereals with a behavior like maize semolina. Some granulated flours are used in culinary applications like pulpy sauces or in vegetarian stacks to bring the chewiness and to obtain a close to meat-like texture. Other granulated dust-free flours are used as clean label carriers for enzymes, seasoning, flavor to replace, for example, maltodextrins. By undergoing process operations like hydrothermal treatment, grinding, and sieving, functional flours reach also improved flowing properties. Flowability is monitored in our laboratory by measuring the Cohesion Index, which is an indicator of the behavior of a flour during transportation through pipes, hoppers, as well during their use in application. Lower the Cohesion Index, better the flowability. Cohesion Index is measured in an equipment called powder flour analyzer. As you could see in the graph, compared to a native flour, which is extremely cohesive, as illustrated by the red zone, our functional flours are easy and free-flowing, corresponding to the green zone of flow behavior. As an example of application, a good flowability is requested for bakery by using sprinkling flours, which are evenly distributed on the conveyor. Low dust sprinkling flours ensure worker safety in a dust-free environment. By a better flowability and absence of caking effects, the dosage and transportation of powders are also improved. Another example of application are the seasoning carriers, where a good and homogeneous repartition of the seasoning on the surface of a snack is requested for sensory but also for economical reasons. Last but not least, our process brings positive functionalities in terms of stability during shelf life, as well as benefits on sensory properties. By undergoing a hydrothermal treatment, natural enzymes present in grains are destroyed. Microbiological load drastically reduced, moisture decreased at less than 12% to inhibit mold development. Inactivation of lipase and lipoxygenase in grains, especially rich in fat like maize or oats, will stop the rancidity process. Inactivation of amylases will conduct to an improvement of the hot texturizing potential of the flour and consistency on viscosity. Shelf life of our ingredients is increased. Most of our functional flours have 12 months of shelf life. Homogeneity and consistency from batch to batch and from crop to crop, premium quality and food safety are all guaranteed. By our process, sensory is improved. Flours get a nice sweet taste, characteristic bitterness of brands, and strong beany flavor or pulses are reduced by a stripping-like process. Moreover, visual aspect and color are improved by particle size adjustment depending on application to create invisible flowers, very finely ground or visual markers when granulated flours are used. Now I propose to take a short look on the raw material. Cereal and pulses grains contain starch, organized in starch granules of different sizes and shapes. By looking under microscope, we can see differences depending on sources. Starch granules are composed of two molecules, amylose, which is a linear molecule, and amylopectin, which is a ramified molecule. In standard variety, the ratio between amylopectin to amylose is around 4:1. In waxy variety, there is a high majority of amylopectin, up to 100%. In high amylose variety, we can have up to 70% amylose. As an example of a specific variety, I propose to take a look on our waxy ingredient produced from a Lemongrain variety, waxy wheat. Waxy wheat functional flour provides interesting functionalities for different applications. For example, in culinary applications, waxy wheat functional flour can be used as texturizer in wet systems and brings high stability and absence of synergies. As illustrated in the picture, you can see the synergies phenomena with two phases separation for a standard flour and absence of synergies with a smooth texture for waxy ingredient. Waxy ingredient can be used also to reduce fat thanks to its capability to mimic fat sensation. In extruded cereals, waxy ingredient brings a light and expanded texture. We provide both gluten and gluten-free waxy functional flours based on wheat and rice, respectively. Sorry. It's okay. In summary, functional flours can be used in different applications, thanks to their functionalities. As clean label texturizer in hot or cold application like soups, sauces, creams, without synergies or to provide softness, for example, in a bread or pastry. As carriers for enzymes, seasoning or sprinkling flours, thanks to their improved flowability and controlled particle size. Consistency from batch to batch, from crop to crop, are guaranteed by a close monitoring of their functionality during the process by our operators. Food safety is ensured as microbiological load reduced, enzymes destroyed, and raw materials carefully selected to comply with regulations and customer-specific requirements. Functional flours are declared as flours. They are clean label ingredients, and we offer both gluten and gluten-free solutions. Moreover, by using functional flours, the number of ingredients can be reduced in the recipe, as they are simply declared as flour. If the same flour does exist already in the recipe, as for example wet flour in a bread, no need to declare it twice. In conclusion, functional flours are powerful ingredients for all food applications in both low moisture systems like bakery, pastry, snacks, carriers, or high moisture systems like soups, sauces, dairy. Thank you for your attention. I give a floor to Elise.
Thanks a lot, Mirella, and thanks a lot also, Katharina, for these very interesting presentations. We will just move to the Q&A session. Just right before this session, I wanted to tell you that with our clean label conviction and commitments, we are thrilled to be your partner in developments. And your sales representative is at your disposal to discuss your needs, your challenges, and how we can adapt our solutions to achieve that together. And speaking of which, to go more into details regarding your challenges per application, I invite you to register to our future Functional Flowers webinar dedicated to these applications. So we have snacks on the 13th of October, bakery in November, and culinary in December. So the dates are coming. Please notice that when you will register, we will send you product samples to taste that together during the webinar and make it more interactive. So we will give you all the details and all the information in the following weeks regarding this organization. So let's move on to the Q&A sessions. We had a few questions. So first, it's for you, Mirella. Do you have functional flowers in organic versions?
Yes, we have a functional flower in organic versions, not for all ingredients, but we can develop depending on the customer requirements, specific ingredients in organic version. Yes, of course.
Also, another question about allergens. So the first one is, which allergen do you have in the factory? And also about the gluten-free. Gluten-free products below 20 ppm, is it certified?
So the only allergen we have in the factory is gluten, and we have also the gluten-free flowers. We have two separate lines, and the gluten, it's analyzed externally in a certified external laboratory.
Okay.
And we guarantee less than 20 ppm. Yeah, we indicate the values in our certificate of analysis.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Another one, which reference do you recommend to reduce fat in meat products? So it's maybe, do we have like a portfolio of functional flowers that can be easily used in meat products?
For the meat product, we usually recommend the granulated flowers, because the granulated flowers have both cold texturizing properties and hot cold texturizing property binding, and they can bind the water and the fat. We have different granulated flowers with different particle size distributions.
Okay, thanks a lot. Actually, we have a question. Is TM40, so the granulated one, a good option for that?
It could be, yes.
Okay, thanks. And last question, and then we are a little bit late. I see that it's 6 minutes past the time. I see that we have another one. The first one was how to declare functional flower. So
functional flowers are declared as flowers depending on the cereal. If it's from wheat, it's wheat flour. If it's from maize, maize flour, rice flour.
Okay. And we can take a last question before we end this webinar. A question for Mirella. Did Lemongrain already studied banana flour? The starch contained in this fruit seems to react differently than cereal starch.
For the moment, we work only starting with cereals and pulses and some pseudo cereals. Not yet, but why not? In the future, we can also try to use banana or carrots or fruits and vegetables.
Indeed. Okay, so I think we do not have more questions on that side. If you have any more questions, please feel free to send that to us. We will gladly respond to it. We will send to all the participants this presentation and also a recording of this webinar. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending this webinar, and see you next time. Thank you. Goodbye.